here. Thank you for showing up.
Okay.
And this, I want to introduce James Dill, who I've known for several years now. He is the chair of our SCORE Standards, Professional Standards Committee. He's also a CAR director. You're an NAR director, aren't you?
No, I've been invited, but I haven't had the time. So
Oh,
I
okay. And
don't.
you are an official mediator. You're trained through Pepperdine, through the
That's
law
true.
school. And I
Mm,
believe you have a doctorate in education.
yeah.
so, so you've been around the block a few times.
Yeah. But yeah, but it just depends how you view that. I don't bring that up, and thank you for doing that. But I don't bring that up because it's not what the knowledge. It's not. I don't care how many degrees you got and what you got. It's what's
Right.
inside you. It's what. I'm looking for when I do this, and I'm going off the scale here, but I'm always looking for the autonomy. I'm looking for the purpose. Why in the world are you doing this? And I'm looking for the motivation. What are you actually doing? And motivation and purpose are two different things. And I
Right.
find that to be true. And I'll do anything, and I have, will help the agent to one, stay out of trouble, because that's what professional standards is. And if we're on, I'll go ahead and I'll continue. I'll give you one
Yeah.
thing
And for
that
those
might
of
be
you
of
guys,
interest to you.
please, as I've asked you before, is, show your faces instead of hiding behind pictures. Come on.
Yeah. And if anybody has a question in anything I say, and I say this in all my classes as well, that if you have any question, to stop me and ask me and say, what are you talking about? Or what do you mean by that? Or whatever. And I'm more than happy to answer it. Don't worry, you won't offend me, because the idea is to get the information across and for you to understand it. And if you don't, you know, sitting up here as a talking head really doesn't do much good for you. And I'm more important to get the information disseminated out to you.
So could you explain, because a lot of people don't understand, what is Professional Standards Committee? What's their function, and what kind of things come to you?
We're kind of the arm of the, you kind of, everybody parallels it with like courts and like the legal system and things like that, which they're, even though they're parallel in many ways, but they're really different. But the code of ethics is what we follow, as everybody knows. There are 17 of them, which I find interesting because nobody can remember the number. Doesn't matter. The other part is that the professional standards is that if somebody, an agent or a broker or the public has a complaint against a realtor, they can file it. Now, we have what we call the grievance committee. The grievance committee is made up of us as peers, and we usually have, I don't know, between 12, 15 people on the grievance committee. And what they'll do is that they'll review the complaint. And the way it works, and this is the mechanics of it, and if you're not interested, just tell me, is that if you have a complaint against somebody or the public has a complaint against you, they'll write out the complaint and then they'll send it into the coordinator, our professional coordinators, Christine Borg, and she will take it and then she will get the grievance committee together and present that information, documents and stuff to the grievance committee. There's no testimony. Nobody shows up for it. It's strictly the grievance committee that looks at the piece of paper that has come in, the complaint. Now, what's interesting about it is everything that has been submitted is considered to be true. The grievance committee will not do investigations. They will not pick up the phone. They will not talk to the respondent. In fact, the respondent doesn't know there's a complaint against them until the grievance committee says, yes, we believe a possible grievance. We believe there's a possible violation of the code of ethics. And at that time, Christine sends it all out to everybody and everybody knows. And then she goes to the professional hearing. And that's the mechanics of the grievance committee. And generally, grievance committee, the committee members usually they'll commit themselves generally to 3 years. And 3 years and throughout the months you get to hear grievances and you get to, say yay or no. And then you can add to it, you can take away from the grievance, you can put another article on, or you can take away the article. You have a little latitude there. But again, it's strictly a group of people, your peers, our peers, And they look at it and they ask the question, is there a possible violation of the code of ethics? If the answer is yes, then it goes to professional hearing.
So okay. At a professional hearing, if somebody's found in violation, I know they can, the professional standards can, find them and have them go to education classes. But is this reported to CAR?
Okay, this is how it works when it goes to the hearing. When it goes to the hearing, everybody shows up. That is the complainant, the respondent, the witnesses, the attorneys, and the stenographer, if they so have one, and interpreters, if they need one. And that gets interesting. Once all the information, documentation, and testimony has been given, then the presiding officer with his tribunal, usually there's 2 and 3 people, after they ask their questions and they get things done, and everybody has an opportunity to speak, by the way, then they go into what we call deliberations. And during deliberations, the panel decides, has there been, with the evidence that has been produced here and have been given, is there a violation of the code of ethics? If the answer is yes, then it goes to a penalty phase. Again, this is strictly for the panel. Once everything has been taken at after the hearing, then everybody's dismissed except for the panel, and then they go to the deliberations. And during the deliberations, they will say, as I said earlier, has there been a violation? If the answer is yes, then they'll say, well, what penalty should we give? The penalties are this. You have what we call, and this goes to your question, Laura. There's a couple of letters we have. The first letter is a warning letter. A warning letter and says, it's kind of slap on the wrist. And it says, yeah, you shouldn't have done that. And it'll stay in your file for a minimum of 3 years. The next letter is a reprimand letter. A little stronger in wording. And again, it stays in your file for 3 years. And that's saying, if you do this again, you're going to be in some, big trouble. But the problem with the the reprimand letter is that if that individual wants to be a board member or they want to be a director, when they look into the file and they see this, this letter, the reprimand letter, not necessarily the warning letter, the reprimand letter, then they say, maybe not. It might have an influence on the panel who might be selecting you for that particular position. So that's something to keep in mind. The next one we have a fine. And the fine can be anywhere from $1 to $15,000. After that, then we have education. And that's one of my favorites. Education, we can say you need a contract class, you need an MLS class, you need a DEI class, you need something. And then that's what we do. And generally, we'll give them about 90 days. We'll give them 90 days to go and satisfy that requirement. If they do not do it within those 90 days, they will be suspended from the association. And so what happens is that they have to go and get it done. If they don't get it done, then other than being suspended, they're not a realtor. They'll have a problem with the brokerage because they're not part of the association any longer because of the suspension. However, and it happens, particularly during COVID, we had quite a few of this. A lot of classes were not given, obviously, and even on Zoom, as we're doing now, the classes were not up and running. And what happens is that the panel, they'll call the presiding officer in the panel and says, can we have another 30 days to find a class? Because numerous times, like associations don't give classes anymore because there's nobody to attend. So you might have to go to Bay East. You might have to go to Santa Cruz. You might go to San Mateo. You might have to go somewhere else to get the class. On Zoom, not necessarily a big deal, but when you have to physically get there, then, it can be pretty much. And that's how that works. And after you get it satisfied, then you're back okay. And then we have expulsion. And I've only known one that was expulsion and had nothing to do. I wasn't in the hearing, but it should have been done years ago. The guy was absolutely terrible. But any event, that's how that particular, and then we have a cease and desist. We have a cease and desist order that we can use as well. Now, that's the code of ethics, and that's professional standards. And then we have arbitrations we listen to, and that's a different as well. Does anybody have any questions or anything they'd like to know, or have I put everybody to sleep yet? No? Okay. All right.
Does this get reported to CAR? What if it would, and what happens if you decide that the person actually broke the law?
Yeah. I should have gone one step further with that. If the person has received, I should say, other than a warning letter, other than the education, then the file stays within his file with the association. However, if he gets a reprimand letter, he gets a fine. Those are the triggers, one or both. Those are the triggers that it goes to CAR. Now, CAR will get it, and he'll get a picture of the individual, and it should be pretty recent because we've had some people put their 4th and 5th grade picture on, which of course it was rejected. But the point is they don't want to be recognized. And the other part is they've got a little blurb of what you did, and then what the fine was. Now,
right, that's actually posted for clarification. That is actually on the CAR website. And
it's only for realtors look at it, meaning that the public cannot see it, and they should not see it. Even though we've had
wall of shame.
and that's what you generally call. But if you want to see it, log into your CAR, and then under the little fine up in the right-hand corner, put down Code of Ethics Violators, and you'll see them. In fact, you might even know a few of them, and you'll see they're all over the state. Believe me, we have them up here, and of course, Southern California as well. And that's how you get on the website for CAR, and that will stay on for 3 years. So it's best to, if you can't, this business is not difficult. It's just some of the things people do is they go a bit further, and I can tell you stories all day about it, but I'll give you a couple of stories that I can tell you that if you just use your head, you wouldn't be where you are today. Now, the problem that people see is they'll say, Code of Ethics is great, and then somebody will call the car legal hotline, and then they come up with authority like, well, I called the car legal hotline, and they said this. That's all well and good, and I'm glad you got the information. However, we do Code of Ethics, not the legal, even though sometimes they overlap, but they're two separate things, and people get that confused as well. And I can tell you, and even with attorneys in our hearings, every once in a while, we have to remind the attorneys when they take their shoe off and they bang on a table saying, this case has to be dismissed. No, it's not going to be dismissed. We're going to hear everybody. Everybody has an opportunity to speak. And that's something that a little different than most things, but that's for the hearing. Okay. Does that help?
Yeah. So, but if you think somebody actually broke the law, do you turn them over to the DA's office?
All right. Look at it this way. Let me kind of back up just a little bit and give you. Look at it as 3 different pillars. Look at 3 different pillars. The first pillar is the DRE. That's the Department of Real Estate. The second pillar is the Code of Ethics. That is your associations. And then the third pillar is your district attorney. And I'll tell you about them. So if we get calls, and I get calls every once in a while, particularly from the public, and they'll say, you gotta fire James Dill, you gotta take his license away, you've got to all this stuff. And the fact is, no, the association will not. However, we will listen to a Code of Ethics violation, and it will make our determination, and then, as appropriate, we'll fine them or whatever, but we don't take their license away. So if the license has anything to do with licensing, goes to the DRE. The next one is the Code of Ethics. Now, the Code of Ethics is, we got 17 of them, as I said earlier, and you can do what you want. In other words, you can say, I'm going to file against it, or the heck with it, I'm just going to let him go the way he's been doing business. And that's a shame, because guess what? He's going to continue doing, or her continue doing whatever they're doing. And then every once in a while, we get something that's egregious. And I've reported several people to the district attorney, and I'll tell you what the key is. One, it has to do with public trust. Public trust deals with fraud, and the other one deals with notary fraud and also elder abuse. And I have reported elder abuse. As we realtors, you go into the house, you get to talk to people, you get everything. And I had an elder, and I'll tell you the story. I had an elderly gentleman who just unfortunately had to sell his house so he could move into a smaller place, but he didn't want to leave his home. And so as the story went, and as we get, well, I don't want to say we get close to our clients, but you kind of get in some of the personal stuff. And he started talking, and then one thing led to another, and he said his two sons, adult sons, continued taking his Social Security and his retirement checks, cashing them so they could use it for their own, buying a car and doing whatever they do, and only giving him like an expense only to pay for like food and not enough money to pay for his mortgage and his housing. And that bothered me. And families do that, unfortunately. And I reported it, and the DA took over from there. And they've got a special unit, by the way, and it's a great unit. Santa Clara County, I got to tell you, is with Jeff Rosen as the head man over there. I got to tell you, they do such a great job of taking care of our clients and taking care of people who have been victimized, and whether it's from the family or from another person or whatever. So I always say, if you have an issue, you can always call me and I'll give you the phone number. You can call them and they'll be more than happy to talk to you.
Wow. So what is the most common ethics violation that you've been running into?
Disclosures. Disclosures and people being something that they're not. And what I mean by that is that don't be an expert when you're not an expert, and don't go out of the area of being the scope of a realtor. And what I mean by that, I'll give you an example of the scope of a realtor. And this happened some years ago, but it's still a good story. And everything I say, of course, is true. There was an agent up in Los Gatos, and they were selling a house. And the agent and the man he was a single guy who was really busy, and he does a lot of traveling. And he bought a house, and they were very happy. And then the man says, I want to redo my kitchen. And of course, the realtors, as us realtors, we're always pleasing. We're always out there helping people. And we'll say, hey, great, I'll help you. I'll give you information, and, I'll tell you the contractor. He says, can you project manage this for me? Well, I'm gone because I've got to go to Europe for about 3 weeks. Not a problem. So she went ahead. He wrote the plans out, and everything seemed to be pretty good. He took off. She hired the contractors. She paid him. She did everything as the project manager. 3 weeks later, he comes back. He opens the door, and he goes, what in the world did you do? I don't like any of this. This is horrible. She just got finished paying $100,000 for all kinds of, stuff in the kitchen. That's what he wanted, and that was his budget. Not a problem. Well, the problem was he came back and sued her and says, look what you did to me. And you were a project manager. And of course, what did she do? She went to the broker and says, I need my E&O. Look, I'm getting sued. You got sued for 60 grand or whatever. I'm being sued. You know what the broker said? You're not covered under the E&O. How come? Because you worked out of the scope of a realtor. You were project managing, and project management is not a scope of the realtor. And she lost. So that commission, whatever she got before, she had to put more money in as well. But that's a true story. And that happens more and more. And I can tell you more. There was one out Yuba Buena. There was one out there too. And oh, God. But anyway, the point is, folks, is that work within what we know. I can tell you a lot of funny stories, and they get themselves in trouble. And I know you mean well, but just be careful.
So when you talked about disclosures, what is the most common thing?
It's just disclosures in general, I'll say. So that would be not, something. Well, I'll tell you, I gave up a $3.5 million listing. The guy wanted me to sell his house. And he said, listen, James, beautiful house. He said, James, I'll tell you what, I want you to sell my house for $3.5 million. However, I don't want you to say anything about the plumbing in the garage because underneath the floor, apparently there was a problem and it leaked or whatever, and he didn't really want to fix it. He told me, and I'm going, I can't do that. And I said, even when you fill out the TDS and when you fill out the other forms, you're going to be disclosing that there's a problem because you know it. It's called a material fact. It's a known fact. And he looked at me and he says, no, you can't say anything about that. And because you have a fiduciary responsibility, I love that word, fiduciary, that you're supposed to do what I say to do because I am your employer, so to speak, because of the listing agreement. I looked at him and I said, I think you better find another realtor because I am not going to do that for you. And I'm not going to say have a good day. I'm going to say, I hope you disclose it when you sell your home. Bye.
Wow. This is something I had mentioned to you in my email, HOA docs. Because we have a fiduciary duty around the HOA docs. So, first of all, getting them. Oh. So how do we properly handle that, and what can be the consequences if we do not show that we did our due diligence to obtain them?
Document. You document everything. Documentation will save you, and make sure you use your notices to perform. Make sure you always
to perform. Thank you.
and NTP, notice to perform, whether it's to the buyer or the seller. Seller, where is those documents? Now, CAR has a form, as if we have enough of them. CAR has a form that requests the documentation, the HOA documents, and I highly recommend you use that. Now, I don't know what they're charging. I know sometimes they'll charge you $100 or $200 to the seller. But down and I can tell you from CAR, that's some of the meetings I'm in, I can tell you down in like Joshua or down in San Diego area, they charge them $1,000, $1,500 for HOA docs. I mean, it's just absolutely absurd because there's no rule on how much you can charge. And what these guys do, I know I digressed a bit here, but what these guys do is that they'll say, we need HOA docs. So the person they requested the HOA docs from sends them a link. And they say, well, here's the link. Give me $1,500, then invoice them for $1,500.
Wow.
And that just bothers me. But the point is that they have to get the HOA docs. The seller is responsible to get them. And HOA is just one of those really, it's a tumultuous relationship, which it shouldn't be, but because you really need to get the information to your client, hopefully he's your buyer. And if you're the listing agent, then by all means, you've got to push and shove and find out. And make sure when you go forward and you do get the HO docs, make sure you also get all the minutes behind it. Get at least a year's minutes. And of course, you want to look at the finances on top of that as well. But right. I'm not going to tell you how to do business.
Right. Which I'm is in saying, the contract. Yeah.
Yeah. Make sure you follow it. Okay?
Yeah. Because one of the things I'm trying to press upon people is we have a fiduciary duty to ensure that the contract is held to and the law is abided by, and that if we don't, we can be held responsible because we failed our duty.
And it's part of agency as well. And if you want to see what agency looks like, look at the agency disclosure and turn it over. Yeah, there's part of it. I know they're little words and they're really like font is like what, -5 or something, incredibly small. But if you want to see more information, but remember, you have the relationship of agency, and that's our duty as well as the fiduciary responsibility. But know what fiduciary responsibility, there's many items behind that, one for the buyer and one for the seller.
Okay. Let me give you something that happened, and I want your opinion on this. In fact, I think I wrote it to you about it. Was I was checking documents, and the RLA was missing quite a bit of information. It was missing, in fact, it was missing beginning and end date. It was missing the price. And when I questioned the agent about it, saying, well, I'm being mentored, and my mentor said that she would fill that in, and it was all ratified, it was all signed and initialed. And she says, so my mentor said that I could fill that in later.
You don't have a contract. I'm trying to, well, the first thing I do is I say, I'm not an attorney, I'm not a CPA. And if, after the 20 years I've been doing that, you kind of get into that routine when you talk to anybody. I'm not an attorney, I'm not a CPA, unless you are one, of course. And I'm going to say, well, where's your contract? If you don't have a beginning and end date, you don't have a contract.
And no price.
It's just, and price. You can't say to be determined. No, that's not what it's asking. It's asking, what is your price? And then, of course, you can do your addendums and your MIT and all the other forms you can use if you change on that. But no, you don't have I give it back to him and it says, you don't have a contractor. Well, got to be careful how you say that. I understand. But the point is that, if you're going to do business with me, fill out the form.
Right. And isn't it correct to say that once everything's been signed like that, you cannot change it without going back and writing, well, actually, you can't write an addendum to fix an voided contract, can you? You can't touch the contract.
If the contract's voided, it's over. It's negated. It's gone. The void. So write a new contract.
Okay.
That would be the easiest thing to do rather than put on one medium. Yes, please go right ahead.
So just about what Laura just said, suppose we got a listing agreement and then we don't see the price on it. But if which was signed on, suppose 26th of October, and then on the same day, if we are getting the on same day or immediately next couple of days, we are getting the modification of terms signed for the updated price, whether is it still considered as a valid contract or we have to rewrite the contract?
I would say you don't have a contract, but I'm not an attorney. But the reason I say it that way is because you didn't have everything filled out. The to be determined is not filling out that contract. It does not give you clear. You'll say, we'll take care of it later. No, you'll take care of it now. You put a price in there so you can work from something. To be determined is not good. It's not the business acumen. It's not the way we do business, and it's not why contractual things work.
Yeah, and it's against contract law.
Yeah, and again, that's an attorney, not me.
Right. Well,
I got a list of attorneys for you. Yeah. I got an attorney. I got lots of attorneys you can talk to, and I go to a lot of seminars and I listen to them, and a lot of information. But to get back to your, is it? How do you pronounce your name?
Radhika.
Radhika, thank you. As far as asking your question, then I would say no. I'd say you got to have something here.
Yeah, Radhika.
But that would be the listing, though. That would be the listing you're talking about, because that's not on your RPA. That'd be the listing. Yeah, I agree.
No, even this something like this happens even on the purchase contracts where, sometimes people forget to put initials on the liquidated damages section or so. And then we see addendums coming in saying that, it is buyers acknowledge, accept the liquidated damages section.
That's different.
My question, that is different? Okay.
Yeah, because what James and I were talking about, if you're missing specific information, you do not have a contract.
Okay.
That's the terms. You have to have the terms. Yeah. Now, what about? I don't know if you are privileged to read the case just recently that I was on the committee that ratified the penalty. A case where a listing agent was not returning phone calls to an agent who had submitted an offer.
Many times. Yep.
And they were found in violation of ethics. Would you like to talk about that?
Yeah, and the way that works, and before we get going, there was a hand up, and unfortunately, I only saw Keller Williams, but I didn't see a name under it. Who's the person who was Keller Williams, who was who wanted a question? Who might you be?
Oh, I think that was our VA.
Yeah, we have one question in the chat box. I don't know if you.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I'll read it. It says,
Okay,
what
go.
is the rationale for not regulating HOAs with regards to disclosures?
Yeah, it's not it's really, really frustrating from our point of view.
Yeah.
The rationale is we have no control, we have no teeth, we have no government agency we can go and back up. We have no code of ethics, other than it's our responsibility as realtors to get as much information as you can
We're
for
the
your
fodder.
client. Yeah, and it's kind of a sad case, but that's we have nobody, no body, no official or agency body we could go to and say, get these people working, get these people out there.
Right.
HORs are like little independent businesses of themselves.
Right. But if we don't do our due diligence, they can still blame us.
Oh, they will.
Yeah.
You'll get blamed. Don't worry. You'll get blamed. Yeah. And I'll probably talk to you. And that's okay too.
Before we go down that road, talk to us about the phone call issue.
The phone calls. Give me your question again and I'll answer it for you.
Listing agent was not returning phone calls.
Yes.
To someone who had submitted an offer.
Uh-huh.
And it was also then later found out that the listing agent had also submitted an offer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that sounds familiar.
The listing agent was found in violation of 3 different codes of ethics. And her team leader was also found in violation.
Like I say, this is not a difficult job. If you just play fair, that's not uncommon. People don't answer the call. Now, and this is in the code of ethics, and I know there's a lot there. Even though there's 17 articles, if you look at the standard of practice, you will see that there's one area in there, and you can look at 1-7, that it says that you can call the broker. There comes a time when you get to the broker. What happens there is because the guy you're trying to get a hold of happens to be the broker, and they're not returning your call. What do you do at that point? Then you file a complaint, of which they did.
Correct. And in this case, the team leader was also.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would get a hold of the broker or whoever and say, some training. And now at that point, I'd go into supervision. Now, the code of ethics does not cover supervision. However, business code 2350 does. And that's the one we rely on. And then we find other things such as Article 3 and 11 and things of that nature.
What is 2350?
It's a business code that the DRE uses. Yeah, and if you look on the DR web page, it's there, and I think it's 2350 something or other, but that's a business code, and it specifically says that the brokerage or the broker will have a training. They'll have records. They'll have a regular area where they're able to follow the agents to make sure they are supervised, like training meetings such as this, something of that. And everything is documented. So if anything comes up, he says, well, don't you train your agents? She says, yeah, we have weekly meetings, and it so happens. Susan Wang, been attending, and here's her documentation. That's the stuff that keeps you out of trouble. But if you don't have it and you're very lackadaisical about it, it can come back and bite you.
Okay, going back to HOA docs, is it my responsibility to read them?
I have a perfect person to read them. I always hire this one individual who reads them, and there's a stranger. But what I'll do is it's like, well, I won't use that as an analogy, but is it your requirement to read it? My question would be, see your broker. What does your broker want you to do? And that's the way I would leave it. What does your broker? And I use that a lot in classes in particular. I'll be asked questions. And many times I will say, I can't give you a definitive answer on that. Is it your responsibility? Perhaps, and perhaps not. But if you're not clear, your broker should be giving you guidance on that.
Okay. Do we have any more questions in the chat?
No, everybody.
Oh, Ivy has a question.
Okay, I have a question. Going back to beginning and ending of contract and putting to be determined.
Yeah.
We have a listing that has beginning, ending, and a price, but the seller said the house is not ready. I don't want you to put that in the market. A target date is January, but my co-listing agent said, long as just put to be determined, we could do an addendum if we want to put it early in the market. I mean, if we finish right away. So is that a violation by not putting a date on when are we going to put it in the market to respond to the seller's request?
No, you can put a date of when it's going to be in the market because there is a place there, if you notice, it says, when do you want this to be listed? Oh, there is a sentence in there that says.
Yes, there is, but we don't know whether it will be January or late December. So we say, let's just put it to be determined, and then we'll do an addendum once.
No. I would suggest this. I'm not your broker, but I'll give you a suggestion. I would say put a date in there, and then you can always withdraw it, right? Mm-hmm. Because you put it in there, and when you put it in there, you put it in under coming soon, or you can also put it in there withdrawing it, right? And that will protect you. And then when the date comes, you can go ahead and go back to active again and make it available to everyone. And that's the easiest way to do it that I would see. Otherwise, you get a bunch of paper going back and forth and addendums.
What I was thinking is, since also we have to put a price to have it as a contract, but if at the time that we finish, we change the comparable, and then we find out, hey, the price, maybe we should change the price. Do we redo the contract, void it, or just do an addendum?
No. Use the MIT modification. Use your modification. Yeah. Okay. Use that. Don't use them then. I see addendums all the time. Don't. You've got a form for it. Use the form that.
So modification is the right way to do it.
Yeah, it's MIT, is it? Yeah, because that's what you're doing.
What about?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sure. Anytime.
What about procuring cause?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, procuring cause is now arbitration. And when it comes to procuring cause, the situation, as we're always looking at, is it the broker? Is it the agent? Or is it the agent against agent? Procuring cause is interesting. Procuring cause, by the way, for the panelists, has just been changed. In other words, the 24 items that we look at for guidance, there's a few of them that have been changed. And when I say changed, it's all changed for clarification, not to change the content, but just for clarification. And one thing I particularly see when it comes to procuring cause is the agent against another agent screaming, I brought the client in, I brought him over the threshold, therefore I should get the commission. And I hear that a lot. The only problem is we don't just who brought the person in or your client in, but we want the story. And that's the key to this thing. So you'll say, well, listen, I got a BRBC, and that's the buyer's recommendation, buyer compensation form, buyer brokers for some. You say, well, I've got that. Well, that's fine, but that's not a guarantee. That's not 100% guarantee. What it is, it gives you it's very substance, and it's something that you can hang on to, say, you had this contract, therefore that makes it a little bit more powerful. But even if you didn't have it, the question is, what's the story? Who brought the person in? And have you, things like, excuse me, my nose runs here. Things like, have you written other contracts? How many houses have you shown them? What kind of a relationship do you have with them? Are you sending them a text and you'll say, oh yeah, check this link out. There's 5 houses that might fit your needs. That's not really the way it works. What you want to say, what kind of a client relationship have you had? And if you don't have one with them, if it's just one of those that, when we get together or I'll give you a call on a weekend kind of thing, you may find it may not favor you very well, because we're looking for things that are very more of a relationship where it's not just a phone call and how you doing and let's go out and have a Starbucks. We got to go a bit further than that. So that's what I look for procuring costs. And it's the story. And like I say, and if you've got the documents, that's even better on your side as well.
One of the things that I get asked about is FSBOs. So if I'm dealing as an agent, if I'm dealing, representing the buyer, do I need to give the documents to the seller to fill out?
This is what I do. If it's a FSBO, the first thing I do, any documents that I have from my client, which would be the buyer, I give it to them. I'd give it to the FSBO guy.
But do I provide them with the TDS to fill out?
No. What you do, we have a form. Love our forms. We have a form that says, I am not your realtor. I am not your agent. And every time, and I've done this a few times, that they'll say, I don't want anybody to represent me. I'll take care of it myself and all that. I have no issue with this. But here's the form to say that I am not your realtor, because I do not want to be responsible for the things that you may or may not do. And I don't want to be put in a position where I am now counseling you how to do things. So I give them this form, they sign it, and then, we go off from there. But I am not your realtor, and that's fine. I have no problem with that. And I will treat you as a FSBO, but I will be polite. I will be honest. And you will get I do want to see a TDS. I do want to see all these forms. I do want to know something about your house, because you have a responsibility. Remember, we're in California. You do have a responsibility to tell me about your house, everything about your house. I want to know about permits. I want to know things that have not been permitted. Those are the kind of things I need to know.
So where do you see where agents make the mistake of crossing the line and acting as their agent?
Acting as the FSBO is when they sit down and they'll say, here, I want you to fill out a TDS and I'll show you how to do it. Like, why are you doing that? That's for them to figure it out. And kind of tough, but that there's certain things that they need to do on their own without you. I'll guide them. I'll recommend things to them. But when it comes to things like filling out and doing things, I like to see a TDS. I'm going to walk to the house and do an avid. You're representing yourself. And I just let them know, you'll get the documents from me. But if you need documents, then you need to get a realtor or, your attorney, and I don't care. You'll have to do it on your own, that I cannot be a realtor. And that's what that form says. I am not your realtor, and I do not provide realtor service, and that's including forms as well. I have a question from, who's that, Chloe?
Chloe, yeah.
Hi.
Chloe. Hi, Chloe.
Hello. So that was actually, you sort of half answered my question.
Okay.
You were saying that we would have to provide them with the documents.
No, I say what I do is I'll say, you need the documents. I can't provide them because I'm not your realtor. But I'll provide the documents that my buyer has filled out, such as the RPA and the AVID and all the other stuff.
I see.
That I'll provide. Yes.
So how would they get the TDS?
That's up to them.
But
I hate to say that, they can go to an association and get them. They can buy it. They go over you can even get them on the internet, and that's the way you want. And you'll say, I'd really like to know as much about the house as possible. They will not be held to the standards of a realtor. They will be handled as a seller, and they'll say, to sell your house, do I have to tell you anything about it? In California, it's not a bad idea. Anything and this I'm talking legal here. Anything that's what we called a material anything that's called a material object or anything we know for sure, they have to disclose. And they can't say, well, oh, I don't have to tell you that. The answer is yes, you do, because I can come back as a buyer. I can come back and get you. But if there's anything with a material effect, then you have to tell me. And I want to know about the house. And that's, you want your buyer to know about it too. And it's all liability stuff, yeah.
So I would, if I were on the buy side of this, I would encourage the for sale by owner person to contact their local realtor association and get copies of the contracts that they would need.
No, the realtor association probably won't sell them. Now, they used to at one time, but the association won't do it. And CAI won't sell it through them either. So they have to get it probably through the internet or some other. And what will happen is that, and I've seen the realtors do this, they'll just give them the copy of it. They'll say, here's a blank and I need you to fill this out. I've seen that happen.
Okay, so
but I'm not your realtor.
But,
yeah.
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
I know it's good.
Yeah, because Radhika was asking about FSBOs. If the buyer's agent provides the blank forms of the seller's disclosures, is this crossing boundary?
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm wondering, because our names are on our forms.
That's it. Right. Yeah. And you've got the form saying you're not the realtor, too.
Okay.
But it's a difficult, there's some gray areas in that, and I can't give you a definitive answer. I will do what I can to help you, but I will not show you how to sell your house. There are certain things I can't do. One would be like you were mentioning earlier, the TDS, the Abbott, and things of that nature. But I will represent my client, and that's the best I can do because that's my job. That's what I'm doing.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I know it's so many of this stuff is, I do, and I appreciate it. You want that definitive answer so you can say, do I do or not? And I always say, go see your broker. How do they want to operate? But when it comes to FSBO and stuff, remember, he is a citizen of the community and he's selling his house and he is to give you all the, without sounding like an attorney, you'll say, you're supposed to, you say supposed to, don't say have to. You're supposed to tell me about things, the defects, things like about the house. And you can walk around the house with them and, you can just say, my plumbing doesn't work and this doesn't work. And it's not that the faucets doesn't work. It's certain things that does not work, such as the electrical panel, things of that nature. But I don't get really techie because I always say I like to have an inspection and then you can have your inspector go in there and look at it because he'll probably won't pay for it anyway.
Yeah. Which is why he's being a FSBO.
Yeah, he's remember all the money he's saving doing that, right?
Yeah, after he gets sued.
Yeah, after you get and then you're going, holy smokes. Yeah, I know. I always tell them, see an attorney. If you're going to sell a house yourself, I have no problem with that. Go see an attorney, and I have no problems working with attorneys. Because even though they get very, they get sort of like, they have a client, they got to protect their client. They're familiar with the real estate law and, get them to be on your side and you'll work it out. But as far as giving them things, telling them things and guiding them, the only thing I'll do is I'll call them and I'll say, I have an offer for you and I'd like to present it to you. And then I go down and I do get an agency disclosure from him. I get an agency disclosure from him. I will tell you that. And I will also, then at that time, I'll present the RPA. So anyway.
Well, speaking of agency, and this is something I've had a lot of people ask me, and I agree with you, but when should a person have someone sign an agency form?
I would like it almost immediately. If you read the agency disclosure, my question to you or to anyone, please, anybody, chime in on this. When would you have an agency? What is the purpose of the agency disclosure form? And then do you have to, and I use that term not lightly, do you have to have it signed? And when should you sign it? And that goes to your question, Lori. And my question is, anybody want to try that? What is it? What is the agency disclosure? What's the purpose of it?
To let them know you're a person who'll be serving them. And as far as I know, I just took the agency section of the my renewal
Good.
test, it says prior to even doing the listing, prior to even writing the purchase contract, you're supposed to do the first thing you do is agency disclosure. That's very well written there, prior to doing anything.
Yeah, thank you, Ivy. And yes, it is. It's a civil code, and it's a civil code 2079. I came back in 1960. I know some of the history on this stuff. In fact, I know some of the people who put these forms together for us, and it's fascinating how all this came about. But getting to the point of when should you have an agency disclosure, maybe not the first time, but the second time, I will bring it to their attention. And I said, I would like you to read this. Just like the FSBO. The FSBO, when I see him and I'll say, hi, this is a required form. And then I would like you to sign this. And it's not a contract. You got to remember to say, and it says right on the top, it says disclosure, but you say it is not a contract, it's a disclosure. And it's disclosing what I can do and what I can do, because I'm talking to you about real estate. You know, I can sell the property, I can be a dual agency, and I can also be the buyer's agent. And that, you know, that's what it says. However, most people don't understand that even if you have a conversation, and here's the word, other than casual conversation, then an agency disclosure should be, should be signed. Now, when should you sign it? Again, I do it by the second time. No, you don't get it signed the day before close of escrow. Way too long. You got a problem. You could have a real big problem there. So I always say first or second meetings. First meeting, probably they don't want to talk to you about forms and all that. But as far as a second meeting, maybe if I know I'm probably only going to see this guy once, I give him the agency disclosure. And the reason you do that is because the wording, if you read it, the wording says, other than a casual conversation, that according to Civil Code 2079, that we have presented this form to you. Remember, it's a disclosure, not a contract. And then you give them a copy of it because they signed it. And of course, you keep a copy too.
Sweet. Well, we're just about running out of time here. Does anybody have any other questions? Because I think it's great to be asking questions.
Oh, I love questions.
Yeah,
I love
questions.
Yeah, I teach a number of classes. Right. Other than the contract class, I teach an AVID class. I also teach the TDS.
AVID. What should be on an AVID? Should it ever be blank?
No. An AVID. One thing I see about AVIDs is that people go too far with an AVID. If you read the very top of it, it has a word, and that one word is visual. Visual. And that means that as you're walking through the property, you visually see things, and those are the things that you put down on the AVID, okay? I've had people walk through the house and they move refrigerators, they move stoves, they turn on all the faucets. That is not visual, and leave it alone. What are you trying to do? The problem is that, and I had, I don't know if you have time for this quick story, but I had one guy, I had one agent, just absolutely, as he was doing his AVID, he was looking at the window, which is fine, and the window had a little bit of moisture in it. Not an issue, except he thought it was an issue, and he says, the window leaks. So what did he do? He went outside, got the hose, and sprayed the window. And then when he was done, he came back in and looked to see if there was a leak, if any water came in. I won't go further with the story, but I hope you understand that that's beyond the scope of a realtor. That's an inspector's job if they want to go that far, not ours. Ours is visual. And I smile. I just go, holy smokes. But anyway, it does happen. And I'm only saying stay away from it. If you have any questions, go with your inspector. Oh, speaking of which, if the inspector is going on the day, don't you go with him. If the inspector is doing his inspection on the house, that's not the day you go do your AVID. You do your AVID without that inspector around. because that inspector is looking for something different than you are. And if you put down things that he's putting down, if it comes to a hearing, the question is, where did you get the training to do the sub panel of the electrical? Where did you get the training as far as the plumbing and all this? And how did you determine certain things? Those are the things you get yourself in trouble. Chloe, go ahead.
I know it's an agent visual inspection, but I just recently did an avid where the floors were uneven in the house, and you can't see that, but you can feel it when you walk. I did just mention that in the avid. Is that okay?
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. You feel, you're walking and you're saying, boy, does this feel strange? And you say, it appears, or I feel, or something to that effect. Not that you went one step a little bit further, like I tore up the carpet and I took out my straight edge and all that. No. Just what did you see? What did you visualize during the period of time? Yeah, that's fine. You'll be okay. You don't have a problem with that.
Should an avid ever be blank?
No. Never. There is no house that you can walk through, even after it's painted, that there's nothing that you can't. Now, watch me back up on this one. Here's the situation. You walk through a room and there's nothing there. Then I would put something like nothing noted. I would state a little thing in there, nothing noted. If I see a crack, I say a crack. If I see a stain, I say a stain. It's just like you've been taught, and Laura probably hasn't taught you. You don't say, that looks like from, the earth settling and the earthquake or whatever. No, just say it's a crack. Leave it at that. Just say the position and where it is, 3-inch crack, on the top of the roof on the left-hand side or north of the building or whatever. But that's the way I leave it like that. Okay.
We have a question in the chat saying, what is the best way to disclose if agent is one of the principals?
You still have a duty to do so.
I think was asking, how do you disclose it and where do you say that?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm still stuck on Avid. Okay. Then what you do is you go to the MLS and you put it into the private remarks. You don't put it into the general remarks. You put it into the private remarks. Buyer is, or the seller is the owner of the property, or whatever you're saying. But that's where you identify yourself.
Right.
So there is
I think there's a
other
checkbox in
form.
the MLS when you're putting it on the listing.
So
Right,
James, there is no form that needs to be used for disclosing this. MLS private remarks is good enough.
Yeah, the MLS will say, and you do disclose it. You do disclose it that you are a realtor. And then I'd also write, and I'd make sure, and this is so important, and this is where people get themselves in trouble too, is they don't document. And what happens when I talk about documentation? Whenever you have a conversation with your client, I always document saying, this is the date, this is the time, and this is a little blurb of what we talked about. That's how I always do it. And the reason for that is you'll always have a timeline. You'll always have a tracking. You'll be able to track of what happened, when, and where. So, and many times if people says, well, you said on the June the 10th that this particular thing happened. Do you have any documentation? No, but I think it was about that time. Well, you got to be a little bit more specific sometimes, because many times if you don't disclose, it kind of looks bad for you. And at the same time, you're trying to get all the information. I know as a panel member, as I sit as a panel member, I will ask questions. As a presenting officer, same thing. Just tell us the facts. That's all we want to know, and just make it easier. And I will and while I'm at there, I'll just say, make sure you always ask for an ethics advocate. And that was my plug for ethics advocate. And I'll tell you about them if you want more information about that. Okay. All right.
That's good.
Okay, Ivy?
Thank you.
Or
yeah, I
whoever.
think good. Thank you.
Any more questions? You guys are quiet for a change.
Well, if you have any questions, you can ask Laura. And if you want, she can always call me. I'm always available. And so feel like if you have any questions or you need clarification, before I see you, Redika. I see you have questions that need to be answered and you need it now. Feel free to give Laura a call and just say,
Yeah,
listen.
just a follow-up question because it will be beneficial for others too. I know you said MLS private remarks is a good place, but then my point was if listing agent is one of the sellers, there is MLS private remarks takes care of this, but then if it is buyer's agent who is one of the buyers, so is it recommended to put that in disclosure on the purchase agreement, or is there an addendum that the listing agent or buyer agent needs, because the other parties also need to sign it? So disclosure to the buyers or the other parties.
Good question.
So apart from MLS remarks, is there any recommended way of doing it? That was my question.
Yeah, you can do an addendum and say, this is to let you know that the buyer is a realtor or the seller is a realtor, but you already have that on the listing
Buy
agreement,
side.
on the MLS as well.
Yeah, that's good on the buy
Thank
side.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And and I'll leave you with this. There's one thing that people do consistently, and again, it goes back to we're all trying to keep people happy. We're always trying to keep our clients happy. And that is, when do we stop being a realtor? According to NAR and the Code of Ethics 12 well, never mind. Yeah. You never stop being a realtor. You're always a realtor. I don't care if you're not working, if you're home with your family, if you're out enjoying yourself, you're always a realtor. And that's the way NAR looks at you. And so therefore you still could find yourself talking to somebody, acting like a realtor, because when you go out, what do they do? What do people generally ask you to do? How's the market? How much is my house worth? You go through that little dance, and you're acting like a realtor. And therefore, at that point, you could be held responsible as a realtor. Get the agency disclosure, make sure you get that signed.
Yeah, that's a good segue into like the social media, that you have to identify yourself properly on social media posts if you say anything about real estate.
Yep. And you always put your number. Make sure your number follows you.
Number and brokerage.
Wherever your number goes, you make sure wherever you are, make sure that number goes with you. Yep. Put your number on there. Okay. Well, if there are another questions.
Thank you so much,
My
James.
pleasure. And if you have any questions, I'm available. Just feel free to ask. I'll be happy
I
to
think
help.
everybody's been enjoying this a lot.
Yeah.
Well, good.
This was really very helpful.
Yeah. And
very good session.
Yeah. Did you have another question? Go right ahead.
No, all the information was really helpful. The
You okay?
things
Okay.
that we miss, the small things that we miss, and we need to be very careful about as a realtor.
And I can tell you, thank you. And I can tell you, I don't care how many years you've been in this business. There's always something that comes up, and it might be really, really different from the way you learned. And at the same time, it might be what you thought. And many times people will ask another agent rather than go to an authority, such as your broker or your Laura. You go out and you say, well, this is because, and it may not be. You always want to verify. Trust, but verify. And that's a good way I like to look at it. Trust, but verify.
Thank you so much, James.
Okay. Everybody go out and have a fun day, and I appreciate your attention, and it's great. And please take as many classes as you can, learn about this field. It's really a fun field, and I know it's a little difficult right now because of the inventory and all the things and the interest rates and all that, but that too shall pass. You'll do well. I do appreciate everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.